Radio check. Loud and clear.
Josh, you see that plane there?
Yeah, it has 2 stories.
Maybe. I think they stopped building that plane.
Why?
I don't know. Look it up.
This is the final boarding call for American Airlines Flight 2594 service to San Diego.
That was it. That was the spark for my fire.
My name is Josh Robinson, and I'm a flight student at Wings Field in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. I fly a Cessna 172 Skyhawk, so I currently have just about 50 flight hours, and I'm very close to my PPL.
I would say Josh has been interested in all kinds of vehicles, including planes, trains, and automobiles from the time he was first born.
It's pretty much all he does. Eat, sleep, school, planes.
So my first instructor was Elliot Nat. My other instructor that I moved on to after Elliot was Stelios.
Josh is very young and passionate about aviation, so he's pretty proficient because he spends a lot of time working at home and reading.
We gave Josh a discovery flight for his 17th birthday.
I was scared for my first takeoff in a small plane just because, you know, they're so small, they get knocked around a lot. And also being in a single engine plane is also a little scary at first, I'm going to be honest. The hardest thing when I first took control of a plane was really staying straight and level. It sounds simple, but it's really difficult because you have to look at multiple things at the same time. It's not just looking at your speedometer and calling it a day. I applied for an aviation scholarship, I would say upwards of 3 to 4 times, and eventually I earned the scholarship.
Josh would not be flying right now if it was not for the scholarship.
Wings traffic, Cessna 91 Quebec here, turning final runway 24 wings. Stelios, can you help me, bro?
Yeah, what do you want?
The airspeed's so low.
You okay?
Dude, I'm going, what the hell? Are we too high?
Yeah, just go around.
Wings traffic, Cessna 91 Quebec here, going around wings.
Me and Stelios just got down from a flight. Our previous flight was a little gusty. The winds were all over the place on final approach.
I had to take controls from Josh, and we had to go around, and then I ended up doing the landing. The go around is when you abort a landing. The landing was unsafe, unstabilized, or just didn't feel good about it.
And we're sitting there debriefing, filling out the logbook, getting ready for next lesson, and we hear fighter jets circling the airport. And in the middle of suburban Pennsylvania, that is not normal. And we see an airplane on final. It's a Piper, and it was coming into land because it broke the TFR.
A TFR is a temporary flight restriction. If you bust a TFR without permission, then generally you'll be intercepted by fighter jets.
So right when the plane was coming on final, it incurred a power-off stall, I would say 20 to 30 feet above the runway. You can't recover from a power-off stall at that altitude.
Power off stall is when you're coming in for landing and the wing loses too much airspeed and essentially the nose just kind of drops.
To be honest, after the plane crashed and we called 911, we were standing by the FBO, and you know, I told my mom, because if this was on the news, like Wings Field Airport, my mom would have been like, is that Josh?
I could tell Josh was a little shaken up by what he saw, so I, just listened to him tell me what happened, and then I put it out of my head. I really tried not to think about it because it just reinforced how quickly things could change if something were to happen to Josh when he was flying.
After the plane crashed, the next day I got up right away because I knew that mentally it's going to have to happen if I'm going to continue my license. And eventually, after 2 or 3 landings in repetition, I was back to normal.
So I hope what came out of that incident was that the instructors, I hope that they work with Josh, explain to him what happened, showed him the cause and effect, and that how to not have that ever happen to him. So I'm hoping it was a teachable moment.
So my favorite experience with Elliot had to have been either soloing or flying to New York City at nighttime. I first soloed on October 23rd, and that was a big milestone in my aviation journey. There was tons of anticipation, but I knew I just had to take off, because once I took off, you have to land. Just focus on what you're doing too was kind of what I was also worried about, making sure I didn't run into the power plant, stayed clear of the hospital, and landed the plane without hitting any telephone lines.
I would have to say, I think the coolest thing Josh has done since he started flying would be the nighttime flight he took around New York City.
We did the Hudson River, and you could see New York City, parts of Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, the George Washington Bridge. We flew right over Newark International Airport, and for an aviation geek, that's amazing.
The excitement he had when he shared some of the photos from that flight just really made it seem like a pretty unique experience to have at this young age.
The biggest reason I enjoy flying is the freedom it gives you. It's kind of like getting that driver's license when you're 16, getting that permit.
So in the future with my license, I want to take friends up, show them the thrills of aviation. I want to go fly to Sky Manor and get breakfast one day. I want to take my mom to Reading Airport and meet up with her friend and go have dinner at the local airport restaurant. In the future, possibly a career at the airlines, maybe flying private jets. It's all up in the air.
Would I ever fly with Josh? I'd actually rather fly Spirit than fly with Josh. If I'm being completely serious, I would probably fly with Josh eventually.
I would go up with Josh, but not until he is a more experienced pilot.
The advice that I give somebody who's interested in aviation is it's expensive, but it's worth it. Just go to your local airport, and I guarantee that they have some kind of a flight school program there.
Cessna 717 Golf, wind 260 at 8, runway 22 clear for takeoff, fly runway heading.
Clear for takeoff, runway 22, fly runway heading Cessna 717 Golf, student pilot.
This was not an ad for aviation. It was a representation of my journey and its ups and downs. Aviation is unique, simple, scary, and beautiful. When flying in the sky, the possibilities are endless and the adventures are infinite.